The Bulls organization clearly shifted focus at the trade deadline, something that we all know that happened at this point in time. On today's episode, I want to talk about what AK still needs to evaluate over the final 19 games on this roster, and also what he needs to evaluate in himself, and is he ready to make the tough decisions this offseason that can actually lead to real change for the Chicago Bulls this upcoming season. We'll talk a little bit about that. Plus, we're going to dive into the mailbag as it is Mailbag Saturday. All that and more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And listen, I want to reiterate this, and I'm going to say this. I know the Bulls don't play basketball again until Sunday, so we won't see that. But I need everybody to remember that it's not players, it's not coaches that tank. It is organizations and front offices and sometimes ownership groups that tank. And I still see a lot of Bulls fans all up in arms that the Bulls won 2 out of the last 3 games. I understand it, but I think when you look at the grand scope of things, they have the worst losing streak in the NBA in regards to when you look at the last 35 days. They have the worst one. So they can't get much worse than what they are. There are going to be some wins in there because you do have players that on this team that do compete. And most players, they want to play to win the games. Those what players are trying to do. Billy Donovan had a great quote, right? He said this: you're competing to try and win. So absolutely, you always want to do a good job, and you want to be in position to win basketball games. I've said this many times. It's a result-oriented business. With that being said, I feel like I have a job to do with the guys that are here. And what is that? What is Billy Donovan saying in that one? He's basically saying, listen, a lot of us would be fired if we didn't try to prioritize winning at some point in time. And you got to think about that, even if it's not him thinking about just his job with the Chicago Bulls. Maybe he's thinking about the next job, which we'll get into maybe in a little bit of a second here. Every coach is going to try to coach their team to win. And I think you want to coach your players to try to win, so that way you're not preaching a losing mindset. You don't want to go out there and try to put players in terrible positions. This is not what you do now. The Bulls are a very bad basketball team, meaning they're going to still lose more games than not. But it is what it is. And then we all know that the tanking rules are changing. That may not affect the Bulls as much as some people think it is. There's actually some things going around after Adam Silver's recent comments that, that tanking is still going to be record-oriented, and that they have to leave it record-oriented to a degree because they still want the worst teams to be able to have the best chances to get better. Again, parity is a thing that they're pushing in this league, so that's a thing that goes into all of that as well that you have to look at. With that said, though, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about, we have 19 games left this season. We've talked a lot about what we could be looking at. What does AK really need to evaluate over these final 19 games? Here's what I'll say. I got a list of things here. First and foremost, AK has to evaluate himself. He needs to ask himself if he's really locked in with this offseason and really get himself prepared to have an offseason where he is going to have a lot of opportunity to do some things. $122 million underneath the luxury tax, over $20 million in trade exceptions. Potentially, 3 first-round picks in the first 35-ish picks of the draft, right? 3 picks, and I said 3 first-round, 3 picks in the first 35 picks of this draft, even though that Portland pick, it doesn't look like it's going to convey this year. Next year it may convey, and the Bulls may have 2 first-round picks in next year's draft. While not as deep, you could package to move up, right? But the first and foremost thing is AK has to get aggressive. He has to ask himself if he's really ready. That's the first evaluation that AK needs to make. And what his decisions have been up until this point, and is he ready to make better decisions? Have yourself a real conversation with yourself in regards to your own job. Now, do I trust AK to do that? Maybe not. I definitely know he's not going to say it publicly, but all I can ask is that AK be honest with himself when those doors are closed, and it's him with his own thoughts, asking himself, did I do enough? Have I made the right decisions? How many of my decisions came back to bite me? Really get locked in into what you need to do this offseason, because there's a number of things that need to be addressed, right? So first and foremost, right, be locked in the NBA draft. Be aggressive. If you need to move up to get your guy, this is the draft to do so, and at least make those calls. If you see a guy that you think could be a steal. Right now, we still consider the floor, but if you move down and get that guy, pick up more assets, yeah, some Bulls fans are going to question because, oh my God, why do we trade out of where we are? But if it ends up being the right pick, do that. Be locked in with these prospects. Know these prospects in and out. Try to really go in and discover a diamond in the rough, one that a lot of people may not be expecting. Do that first, right? So much of this Bulls offseason comes down to what happens in both the draft lottery, which is out of the Bulls' control, right? Exactly if we get lottery luck or whatever, and then the actual draft, which is to a degree in AK's control. Now, you can't make teams want to trade out of picks or whatever else, but it is in your control to have all the information possible, right? You have missed too much value on draft picks, and you can't afford to do that now. And by missed on value, what I mean is this. How many draft picks have the Chicago Bulls made where we look back and say, damn, look at the number of players that were better than this player that came out of that draft? I'm not saying Noah S. I know people are already ready to say I'm going to wait and see what Noah turns into. But Modest, seems like Modest is one of the best players out of that draft that you got to. One of the best players out of that draft, right? But you look at Dalen. We can just look a few draft picks later in Walker Kessler, right? Patrick Williams. All the bevy of players that were better than after Patrick Williams drafted. Io, there weren't many players drafted better than Io at where. That's what I look at as value, right? Is how many players are better than the guy that you got after where you drafted at, because that is a blind spot in your evaluation if that ends up being the case. So avoid that, right? And then also evaluate is Billy Donovan really ready? Really the guy that needs to be here at the next phase, right? And the reason why I asked that, I don't expect the Bulls to make any change. I want to be clear here. But I really do hope that AK really sits down and evaluates that, right? Because regardless of the place that the roster can go, and there's one of two ways, right? If development ends up still being the focus next season, and maybe not wins, and maybe it is, a combination of, we'll see how much we can win while developing, but we may not win a lot this season. Is Billy Donovan the guy that you want to develop a top 10 pick from this draft, one of the deepest drafts? Yeah, he's done an okay job with Modest. I'm not going to say he's done a terrible job with Modest, but it hasn't been, there's been some question marks in that as well. Do you trust Billy Donovan then at that point to develop Noah Essengay and your top 10 pick? Because if development is the focus, is Billy Donovan the guy to do that? Even if you do feel like you've built a roster then that can get back to competing for a play-in spot, do you trust with how much we've seen Billy Donovan outcoach? Do you trust Billy Donovan to be that guy? That's another question here. There has to be a serious evaluation by this front office. Is Billy the right head coach for the next phase of the Bulls roster? And I already know the answer they're going to come up with, but because it is something that I still want to see them do, I'm putting it on the list. Next up, you got to evaluate the roster. Collin Sexton, Nick Richards, Anthony Simons, right? Like Leonard Miller to a degree as well. Like, how do you view these guys? Are any of these guys, these vets that you added, guys that you want to keep? You can even say the same thing for Zach Collins, a free agent at the end of the season, right? Are any of these guys players that you want to try to keep on this roster? Jaden Ivey is a totally different tier of decision because with Jaden Ivey, restricted free agency, his injury things, the mental stuff that's going on there, you have a lot of questions to ask there, but Jaden Ivey is another question as far as in regards to what's on the Bulls roster now. And then also, two things that we haven't talked a lot about, I think the Bulls are going to have to ask themselves, especially when teams come calling, do you move Tre Jones or Jalen Smith to stack more draft capital? But especially if you're not in a place with your roster where you feel like you're competing for a playing spot, why hold on to those veterans? Yes, they're good veterans. They've helped here. But if teams come calling, we heard at the trade deadline, those could be two players that had some of the most value with the Bulls. If the Bulls do not and cannot build a roster that is you're saying is going to be competing for the play-in, do you look to move those guys? Do you look to see if the value in the offers out there? Do you look to move those guys? So you have some questions internally on your roster that you have to answer, right? And then, of course, free agency. That is the big one. Other than the draft, free agency is the biggest. We've heard a lot that the Bulls plan on being real movers in the restricted free agent market, with targets being Peyton Watson, Walker Kessler, Tari Eason, or Ben Mather. A combination of those players. 1 to 2 of those players, the Bulls could put sizable offer sheets out, with Mark Williams also being some guy. I forgot his name was mentioned in that as well. Mark Williams is another guy that's been mentioned in that. So a lot of, I think, of who we target in the draft comes down to what position, who we target in free agency comes down to what position we draft in the draft. Now, I've been of the mind, you take the best player available. Even if it is another point guard, I think Josh Giddy has shown with Tre Jones, he can play with another point guard if that point guard is more scoring oriented. But again, I just think you have to do that. But what you take in the draft is probably going to directly go hand in hand with, in effect, what you target in restricted free agency. And are you really willing to outbid, to put on a overpay on some of these guys to keep their current team from really thinking about re-signing them? That is a huge thing that AK has to view, right? And we'll see, right? But what we do in that phase, what we do in restricted free agency, to me, is going to tell me how ready AK really feels like we are to compete for a play-in spot next season. And, I said this. I know some people here playing, they automatically get triggered by, I'm not mad at playing next season if the roster is completely younger. Like, we're talking about a roster built around Modest Buzelis. We're starting, hopefully, our player that we drop in the top 10. Modest Buzelis and Josh Giddy are going to be in that starting lineup. And then, your center and stuff that you do, if you're competing for the play-in at that point, but you're looking like you're on the uptick on that, and if you come out of the play-in, which the Bulls have never been able to do, I think that's a lot different of a stance there, right? Where we are with the team when we were 30-year-olds in the play-in. So that's really the things that AK really has to review and look at. But like I said, first and foremost, ask yourself, are you really ready to do this? Are you really locked in to do whatever it takes to build a winning team by any means necessary? That's the most important thing. I keep saying this phrase. Until the Bulls get somebody that cares more about winning than anything else, meaning that they are willing to make the tough decisions, be looked at as the bad guy, whatever it takes to win, this Bulls team is destined to keep circling things, circling it. And so we'll see if anything different does change for this team, but let me know your thoughts down below. With that said, let's go ahead and get into these voicemails. We got 4 we're going to get into today. This one's from Todd.
Hey, what's good, bro? It's Todd. I'm calling after the Bulls got the dub against Phoenix, and I'm sending this one specifically to all the tankers. Listen, y'all, of course we all want more ping pong balls. That's logical. But there's levels to this shit. We need to be focused on strategic W's and L's, not full-out tanking. The Bulls are too far and away from contention to prioritize any single position in this draft, but best player available, wherever we land in the lottery. And also, luck is not an option. It's not a plan. So the difference between having a 20% chance at a top 4 pick and a 26% chance at a top 4 pick is negligible. And it's still all based on luck. We get lucky, awesome. But I'm planning for us to be somewhere in the 8, 9, 10 range. And almost every pick projected by most mocks to be in that range is a guard, specifically a point guard. We got that. However you feel about Giddy, let's talk facts. We traded one of the best defensive players in the league to get him. We just paid him. And he's showing up. He's one of the last players on this roster that they move off of. Even if you believe any one of Fleming's, Brown, Acuff, or Burries are better prospects, do you really want to use our first pick in this draft specifically to take a player that's redundant to arguably the best player that we have under contract? Especially when there's so much other talent at other positions that are wide open on this team. So why push the tent to move up a spot or two, landing directly in a group of best players available, prospects that are redundant to what we already know we have? And actually, it makes more sense potentially to trade back, if possible, to pick somewhere between 10 and 20. There are high-level role players and potential stars there, too, which brings me back to the tankers. Our priority should be doing everything we can to help Portland get as high as they can in the West play-in so we can get that second first in this draft. So beating Phoenix last night got Portland a half game closer to them in the 7th spot. That's exponentially more important than losing that game. If we lose to the Kings on Sunday, cool. Wouldn't be mad at it. But that has no strategic value. Let's be certain to focus on beating the Warriors and the Clippers, which are also coming up in the next 4 games. That would give Portland a half game on each of those 3 teams directly ahead of them in the West play-in. So hell yeah, I want the Bulls to go 3-2, including that Phoenix win over this current 5-game stretch. That's being strategic and not blindly tanking. Hopefully some of that made sense to whoever needed to hear it. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
I do think that you're a little off in regard to the team targets as strategic. Like, I get what you're getting. I get the idea of strategic losses, but a team is going to go out there and compete. No, like we said in the opening, players don't play to tank. Players play to win. and they're not going to try to win less against a team that's strategically placed better to help the Chicago Bulls either get the Portland pick or their own draft pick. It's just not going to happen that way. I hate to say that it's not going to happen that way. This team is going to lose the majority of its games. It's going to lose way more games than it wins. There's just no doubt about that. Now, where I do agree with you at, I do agree that more people need to put respect on Giddy's name. And that's just the reality of it. We get Alt Von calling in all the time, and then every voicemail has to throw a dig at Josh Giddy. But I agree that more people need to realize we got a point guard. He's a point guard that can average a near triple-double. Now let's go out there and fit pieces around it. Where I also disagree though with you is that I do think the Bulls can draft another guard, even if that guard is technically listed as a point guard. The reason why I say that is that we were best when the team was playing its best basketball when Tre Jones and Josh Giddy were the backcourt. 2 point guards, 2 pass-first point guards in a lot of ways. And I think if you change that with if it's another guard that can pass, but maybe is more defensive oriented and more scoring oriented, then at that point there could be a fit. Where we went wrong with the Tre Jones and Josh Giddy backcourt is that there were times where Tre Jones just passed up shots because he's not a shooter. He's not a scorer. He's going to do some of that, but that's not how he's going to make his bread and butter. It depends. And if it's more of a scoring guard, I think there. But I think the Bulls are still should take best player available and let the West figure out, take whoever you feel truly can turn into a star. If you do that, I think that's going to be right. I'm not saying that I do think that's what they should do. I'm just saying that I think that I can see AK even taking another scoring point guard, and I can see it. I could completely see it happening. All right, let's get into this next voicemail, man. This one's from Sherrod.
What's to it, hey? This is Sherrod. Listen, I'm confused as shit. I don't know what really to make up what's going on. The only thing I can come up with, they traded everybody that they thought Modest would defer to and would stun his growth. Got their ass out of here, and they have no choice but to get this young man the keys and say, man, drive it. And from here on out, he on the clock. See if he can do it. See if he can handle it. If not, it's going to be on to the next one. At the end of the day, now you reset the clock. You want to start from here, you got to build a team. I don't know where they might build, where they might land in the draft pick range. I don't know. Top 5, top 10, I don't know. I'm just looking at the team and saying what I think the team might need moving forward. So if you're going to build off of Josh Giddy, you're going to build off of Modest, okay, cool. One thing you definitely going to need to bring in here is some bitter nasty, some bitter physical, and some bitter I ain't going to take no shit. And I think you need to look at Malik Dia, or take a look at Ruben Tinaloo. Like, them cats, they athletic for their size. They both measure at 6'9". Malik is a bit more skilled, but he's definitely got some nasty to him, too. We need a little more enforcer in here. Tinaloo reminds me a lot more of Beef Stew. But still skilled, still athletic, but very fiery, I ain't going to take no shit. And if I'm looking at everything, that's one thing teams come in here and try to do is punk the Bulls, push the Bulls around, make the Bulls quit. We need somebody in here with that enforcer mentality that ain't going when the Detroits come in here and try to push us around. The Orlando's come in here and try to push us around. The Indiana's come in here and try to push us around because they try to chump us on some little bro shit, and that ain't going. We need somebody in here to say, we ain't going. That ain't how it's gonna be put around here in Chicago. Because we don't dance to them motherfucking tunes, we going to get dead on your ass if you get in it too far. So, pause. So, I'm saying that's exactly what we need around here. We need somebody around here, man, that's going to really be the enforcer, that's going to stand up and make sure that those two cats ain't going to be pushed around here. What you think? Let me know about it, man. I think Tinaloo, I think Malik Dia, I think them cats, and you know, you can get them at the end of the first round. You can get them in the second round. I don't think neither one of them would be too price consuming when you want to get the big shiny toy at the beginning of the draft. You got these grunts that's down here at the back end that you really need on your roster. That I think every championship building team needs on their roster. So let me know.
I think we need to focus more on talent than just somebody being an enforcer. We need shooting, we need shot blocking, we need on-ball defense, we need switchability. If one of those guys is an enforcer that also brings some of that skill set, great. But I think at this point we need to focus more on, getting the best player available, adding the most talent to this team. An enforcer you can worry about when you get an enforcer, right? Like when you get to that, when you get the talent, you can worry about, all right, now we need to go out and get an enforcer. You're like, I don't think you can target stuff like that, especially not in a draft, while you're still in a place where you need so much more talent infusion on your team. It's just my thought process on that. So that's my thought. Let me know what you guys think on that down below. Let's get into this next one, man. This one's from Sean.
What up, Haize? Sean calling. I liked what you said about Keaton Wagler in the post game yesterday. I do think that he would fit well next to Josh Giddy. Another guard, if we fall to between like 9 and 10, another guard that I would like, and I want to know what you think, is LeBaron Philon. I think he would play well next to Josh Giddy too, but what do you think? Have a good one.
Keaton Wagler is a prospect that, in that 7 to 10-ish range, I like him a lot. I know that he's on ball, but I think when you look at all the things in him growing as an off-ball player, I think he projects to be a shooting guard at the next level. I really like him. I think he's going to be a really damn good player. I think he has the motor. I think he has the mindset. He's one of my favorite players, and I think one of the players that has the most upside in that 8 to 10 range, right? Now, as far as LeBaron Philon, as well, he's cool. I like him, but the wingspan would be almost right back where we were with Kobe. The lack of defensive motor has been a question there for him as well. He's also in that same 8 to 10 range, but if we're talking about who I'd prefer Wagler more over that, but we'll see what the Bulls do in that case. I think they're gonna interview and bring in and work out a lot of these guys. They should do their due diligence on everybody. Like I said, AK needs to be really prepared for this draft, and we'll see what comes out of that one. But great voicemail there, Sean. Let's get into this last one, man. This one's from Jeremy.
Hey, what's up, Haize? This is Jeremy, your boy down here in Oklahoma. It's been a minute, but just wanted to chime in. Couple of things. I'm like you with Miller. I want to see a little more, but hopefully they give him a chance, and this is the perfect time to get some more minutes out of him and see what he's got. But so far, I'd rather see him out there than Patrick Williams any damn day. And it's just kind of ironic, though. It's a Bulls thing. We get rid of it. We had his brother, and then we get him. So that's just, that's comedy. And other than that, I hope we just give it'd be nice if you give Ulbrich a little more minutes. It's kind of hard for him to develop at all, getting 2 to 3 minutes a game. But, whatever. I mean, I'd rather see him get some, maybe Patrick's minutes, if possible. But, it'll be exciting. I love Collin Sexton. I mean, I love his mental. We'll see if they plan on keeping him or not. But I'm like you. I agree. I love him. I love his leadership qualities. He's vocal. That's something that we definitely lacked. Just someone being out there, telling people where to be and just calling out the basic shit that sometimes we forget about. Nick Richards. I love Collins. I'm like you. It's back and forth with that. Collins is awesome, but he just stays injured. So what I do like about Nick Richards is the lob threat. He just seems more of a lob threat than Collins. So I just think he fit a little better. But, I could be wrong. But, I'm definitely not sold on Rob Dillingham. So I want to hope that he can be maybe trade bait. Maybe throw him in with Patrick Williams. I don't know. Shit, Patrick just brings any trade down anyway. So, we'll just kind of ride that out to the end. But, I'm hoping Noah develops into something with Noah, Mattis, Giddy, get some more length. Hopefully we're all counting on a good draft, something like that. So that's what it all goes down to. But other than that, tell me what you think, man. Peace out and see red.
Little Miller is definitely showing some things, right? But I'm not going to gas it and act like I've seen some people say things like, oh my God, he absolutely has to be part of this team going forward. I'm not going to say that yet. What he looks at right now is a player that is worth keeping on the back end of your bench, a player that's worth at 22 years old, seeing what you have in him in the next couple of years to see how I can continue to develop. Yeah, why not, right? That's what he's shown so far. Looks solid in some areas. Like I said, I'm not going to gas it and act like he's been great, but he's looked pretty damn solid, so I'm not mad at it. As far as Ulbrich, as long as you have big men that are hurt and lack depth there, why not play Lachlan Ulbrich a little bit more, right? I'm sure they have their reasons for it and things that they feel like he's ready or not ready for, but I wouldn't mind seeing Lachlan Ulbrich a little bit more at all. And then as far as Dillingham and Richards, I mean, listen, I could see both these guys sticking around in some shape, form, or fashion. It really just comes down to what their role is going to be next year, right? What is that role going to look like based off what the Bulls do in other places? Rob Dillingham is fighting for his life right now. I'm not going to lie to you. He's fighting to have any type of role on this team once everybody's fully healthy, especially if we do draft or sign another wing or guard, which could push him even further down the pipeline there. So we'll see what happens. Overall, I like I said, I'm not going to write the story on him yet. We'll see what Rob Dillingham ends up turning into and becoming for this Bulls team because, he's a young player that I would love to see be able to say, in a few years that like Rob Dillingham turned into something here. I would love to be able to say that. I'm not at the point where I want to hate on Rob Dillingham just to hate on him or whatever. Like he's in a Bulls uniform. I want to see him turn into the best version of himself. And if that's here and it's productive and it's great, so be it. If it ends up that he's not, then, I don't think the Bulls gave up, a whole lot to where, yes, Io was involved in that trade. He wasn't necessarily the focus, but, it is what it is. I mean, at this point, the trade is done. We can't go back and undo it, unfortunately. I know a lot of Bulls fans would love to be able to do that, but you can't. Rob Dillingham is a Bull now. So as long as he's a Bull, I'm going to hope that he actually turns into something. I'm not going to actively root against that, but, we'll see. And, we'll see if he can turn into something. But that's going to do it for today's episode, y'all. That's my time. I would love to hear from you guys on how you feel about all the topics and the voicemails. Leave that comments down below. Also, don't be afraid to call in yourself. I'll tell you how to leave that here in just a second. You guys can make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. You can follow us at Bull Central Pod. You send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.